This episode of the 84 Million podcast is sponsored by LitVM, Litecoin's virtual machine. LitVM enables smart contract capabilities and Web3 applications for Litecoin. Designed for builders, LitVM features a modular ZK stack that operates on top of Litecoin and is powered by industry leaders such as Bitcoin OS, Arbitrum, Espresso, Succinct, and Caldera. Together with all the other builders in the ecosystem, LitVM is advancing the Litecoin Meta. Visit litvm.com and visit the LiteForge Testnet at testnet.litvm.com. When it comes to mining, pools matter. This is why we recommend POWERPOOL. POWERPOOL is a mining pool built by miners to maximize profits. If you're mining from home or have a larger scaled operation, use POWERPOOL for the best payouts. POWERPOOL supports SHA-256, X11, Blake 2S, EagleSong, K-Heavy Hash, and of course our favorite, S-CRYPT for Litecoin, Dogecoin, Bellscoin, and others. Mining with POWERPOOL is easy with its simple user interface, and the platform has all the reporting exports that you're looking for. POWERPOOL typically charges a 1% fee, but if you use the 84 million link in the show notes, you will pay less than 1%, which is excellent. So sign up, point your machines, and start mining with POWERPOOL for lower fees and better payouts. Cheers, happy mining. Hello and welcome to the 84 Million podcast. Today is episode number 59, and I'm here with Jay File of LiteStrategy. Glad to have him here. Let me offer him an introduction before we dive in. Jay File is CEO and CFO of LiteStrategy, the first publicly traded Litecoin Digital Asset Treasury in the United States. Jay is a financial executive with more than 30 years of experience spanning public accounting, corporate finance, and capital markets. He can be found on X at J_Lits. Of course, LiteStrategy can be found at LiteStrategy. And he joins us today from San Diego. Welcome, Jay.
Thank you much. Yeah, beautiful San Diego.
San Diego or San Diego? I don't know. I've had a bunch of friends from San Diego. Beautiful, beautiful city. Before we go into the topic, clearly we're kind of coming off the Litecoin Summit. I do understand you did have a presentation there, although you weren't there in person. I think overall it was a jam-packed event. Certainly Amsterdam provided its own flavor this year as the first international Litecoin Summit. I enjoyed that 2 days I was there. Like I said, just tons of content. I still need to go review some of these talks that I missed from there. But again, we missed you, but from afar, what was your impression of the Litecoin Summit? Any takeaways for you?
Yeah, no, I heard basically the same thing, that it was great participation, tons of interest. Amsterdam was a great host. I think it was a good pairing with the Dutch blockchain as well. I'm not sure if you stuck around for any of that. And then, in particular, our panel that we had that had Charlie Lee, obviously there, speaking to the company, founder of Litecoin, and Josh Reisman from GSR, who kind of heads up on our treasury asset management side, represented the company, as they're both on our board as well. So they kindly stepped in for me in my departure of not being able to go. But yeah, I only heard positive things, that it was some really good content. Hopefully, I don't know if you got our swag bag. I heard that was a big hit too.
We did.
So,
We did. Yes.
Excellent. I expect you to be carrying it everywhere.
I have at least one of them, maybe even two. I'm not sure.
Nice.
But we
There were
did.
extras.
There were extras. Yeah, it was great. And yeah, you were very well branded at the event. It was the general branding of the summits that I've attended, and of course we've seen them online if we weren't there in person. But I think that venue was spectacular, and just the way it was laid out, it just looked really, really good. So shout out to Bits for all this design work on that.
They did a ton of work.
They did, and it looked amazing.
Yeah.
Before we talk about LiteStrategy, do you have any other maybe bio you want to add to the modest one I presented for you in the introduction?
I mean, you hit on the big stuff, obviously LiteStrategy itself. I do wear two hats, CEO, CFO, a little double duty. Traded on NASDAQ. LITS is our ticker symbol, LITS. And, we're the first US publicly traded company to adopt Litecoin as its primary reserve asset. And we're still the largest institutional holder of Litecoin that is on NASDAQ. So, like I said, I've got a very diverse background. I don't know how all of that time has flown by. I swear I just graduated college a few years ago. But leading up to joining or kind of moving into this role of a dad in July of last year, I had about 15 years in biotech, med tech area, molecular diagnostics, women's contraception, and then moved into oncology, which has brought me to the company that eventually became LiteStrategy when we rebranded after the launch. Um, and so I took over as permanent CEO, and I've been, as board member since November of 25. And it's an interesting process. I can say that originally I never really expected to be in the position where I'm at, but it's very San Diego, very niche. San Diego is very transitory, and this was a great entrance to the crypto space. I couldn't ask to work with better individuals and get to work with them on a daily basis. And we still have a little bit of biotech roots. So it's been a great transition, and I've really enjoyed it.
Very good. And I'm interested to hear more about it as we kind of move along here. Maybe we can just start at,
Sure.
last year, I remember the Litecoin community was really taken aback in a good way when, you guys kind of came out of thin air. We're saying, what's going on? It
Yeah.
was MEI Pharma at the time. And there was a commitment for 100 million Litecoin buy, $100 million Litecoin buy, and a pivot towards a treasury strategy holding Litecoin. And this was prior, like I said, to the rebrand. LiteStrategy came a little bit later. So I'd just like to know the journey between MEI Pharma into the first US based Litecoin treasury. Can you just tell us about that?
Yeah, it was a bit of a blur. I can't lie. It did happen very, very quickly. I think it started and ended in about a month and a half. And you're right. In 2025, I think there was around 70 or 80 DATs that came onto the scene in a very similar way in which we did, which was to kind of relaunch and rebrand in the crypto space and join the community. So actually at the time, as you mentioned, we were MEI Pharma, we were in oncology, and we were actually exploring strategic alternatives. And there just simply weren't a lot of really good opportunities in the biotech space to kind of either do reverse mergers or partner up with. Not to mention the capital markets at that time were horrific. If you did not have a blockbuster drug with some, really good lead-ins, you kind of were kind of out of luck. So we basically started to look for other industries, and that's when we were approached to be a potential vehicle for Litecoin as a DAT. So again, not originally on our radar, but as we dove in on the banking side and got to know everybody, the story itself and the approach wasn't anything really new. It was something that strategy did that, MicroSailor has really redefined the playbook for Bitcoin on treasury accumulation, created enormous shareholder value in the process. However, there was this gap, right? Like you said, there was no Litecoin um, held by a public company that was in existence yet. So there was a real kind of opening for someone to slip in there. And we ultimately felt that Litecoin had some really great potential in its on-chain value to kind of dedicate itself into this type of equity vehicle. So ultimately, as we dove into the conversations, we met Charlie, dove into the banking side, and we really saw that ultimately that the DApp model that provides investors with regulated equity market access to Litecoin without any needing, by an actual individual to hold crypto directly, there's an opportunity, right? And so the ease of access with assurances of a public traded company, a lot of visibility, a lot of disclosures, not to mention we built this amazing team to help support operations. We decided to go all in. And let me tell you, in 4 days of fundraising, we raised $100 million. Could have raised more, but we stopped at 100 and we were off and running. Boom, it was done. And it was quick. It was a great reception. Met some great people I still talk to. The community is absolutely fantastic. It's been a great process, but yeah, it was quick, but it was unexpected, but a lot of fun.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
We heard a little bit regarding this from Charlie last year when he was he was on the road. He was doing a lot to this end. I imagine this might have been a product of that. I'm not entirely sure. Actually, I think this was before that happened, because he was heavier, I think, in the fall. But either way, Charlie Lee, powerful guy in the crypto entire space. He's been around longer than anybody else. His fingerprints are all over the place. Obviously, he's the creator of Litecoin. We had him on this show as guest number 13. We did. And of course, we saw him last week in Amsterdam. He's an early investor in LiteStrategy, I believe, and also on your board. What sort of vision has he shared in his role for what you guys are doing?
Yeah, you're right. Charlie was a part of our pivot right from the very beginning. He participated in the raise a little bit. He subsequently joined our board and is an active advisor on top of that. And I think, ultimately it really helped to position LiteStrategy right out of the gate as a leader in Litecoin. That's, a Litecoin focused dad. And honestly, it probably locked up the space and prevented anyone else from doing what we did with Litecoin due to the raise, that the size of it, the 100 million, and then his presence, right? It really established our credibility right from the get-go. It's kind of hard to compete with that when you've got the founder on your board. But yeah, Charlie's presence in itself, I would say it serves a couple different aspects. I mean, strategically, come on. He provides direct insight into the technical roadmap for Litecoin. He's in touch with the community dynamics. He knows the long-term vision, because he'll create it. So he can really speak to where he thinks it goes and what it needs. And I think that overall, that having the creator of Litecoin on the board of the primary Litecoin treasury company on NASDAQ, it sends us a clear signal to the Litecoin community that we're legit, right? That this isn't just some play, but we're a serious Litecoin focused operation. And yet it also speaks to the institutional and retail investors as well. Because Charlie's not going to be on board if this isn't, something very serious. So, he offers intelligence and insights that no external analyst can provide. And definitely, like even ETFs can't replicate, he just adds a little spark to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a statement about Charlie, minor departure here. This isn't an episode about Charlie Lee. We're talking about LiteStrategy.
Yeah, no problem. It always comes up.
However, he's been maligned over the years as someone who's done a tremendous amount for Bitcoin. The Bitcoin project, at least the louder folks, don't say too much about him anymore. Granted, I think everyone knows he's a legend, but then you have just this kind of FUD and just this. Oh, he sold his coins in 2017 or whatever. These old ghosts keep coming up every now and again. Some people say, well, he walked away. This is a testimony. I mean, the summit's a testimony. As we know in the community, he's very much involved still. A lot of other founders are gone. We don't know where they are.
Right.
Yet we still get Charlie, and he's doing a ton. So I think that's sort of a negative sort of propaganda that we get away with, and I'm sure there's some interests that promote that. But I think this is a perfect example of he clearly has not left the Litecoin project or Litecoin promotion or adoption. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you hit on that at the beginning, that I think that narrative really started when he announced that he was selling off any Litecoin that he owned. And he publicly stated that he wanted to avoid any appearance of conflict of interest due to his relationship with the Litecoin Foundation. And I think that's, that's very respectable, and that speaks to Charlie himself, right? But honestly, like you said, he remains one of the most visible, active founders in the space. And I'm not just talking about Litecoin in itself, which he truly is, but just out of any creator, any founder in the space. So both at the protocol level and obviously now speaking on Litecoin development and Lits and our investor facing work, right? He helps step in as needed. So, I would point to, it's just kind of silly, but it does come up.
Silly. Yeah.
But I would say, in addition to his role as a director and active advisor for LiteStrategy, here he is continuing to serve as managing director of Litecoin Foundation. He also recently joined the advisory board of LitVM, who LiteStrategy just did a recent 1 million strategic investment in back in June. And so he's giving them strategic guidance as they expand their infrastructure. And then not to mention, he shows up at, institutional panels, Litecoin Foundation Summit, discussing the role and treasury use of Litecoin. And he continues to do solo events, additional podcasts, interviews. So I'm not quite sure how anyone can really say he's stepping back from Litecoin in any regard, because he continues to have a direct and hands-on commitment to the network and its next phase of development. So, I mean, I can call the guy on his cell phone if I needed to. I mean, he's in the game.
It's a good contact to have. That's a good word. Yeah, I think that just needs to be said, and a lot of us know it, but we just have to overcome that. Like I said, just unfounded nonsense. Really, like you said, it's silly. So I appreciate
the hate.
They do, unfortunately. But I appreciate your statement on that. GSR, I know Josh was also at this. What's their role in LITs? I mean, what role are they playing, if any?
Yeah, great question. So, we brought on GSR right again at the beginning from a commitments of our data activities, and we have a formal treasury management advisory agreement in place with them. They provide governance, they provide execution on trade strategy, and just general market expertise to not only myself, but they'll step in and have conversations with the board as needed. Like you mentioned, Josh Reisman is he's the chief legal and strategy officer, I believe he has both, at GSR, and he sits on our board and brings like 2+ decades of legal and financial services experience. The guy's fantastic. And I think the real note here is that GSR brings the company an institutional grade type infrastructure without having to do the expenditure, right? So we have access to well-seasoned expert resources. And it's just not a simple retail operation. And I could probably say I talk to someone from the GSR team almost daily on various different topics. And they're just a fantastic resource. I cannot say enough good things about GSR. And then, like I said, Josh on the board with Charlie, it's a 1-2 punch when it comes to understanding exactly what's going on to the DAT space, general questions on direction, Litecoin development, and other opportunities. It's, we've got a nicely stacked board that goes without saying.
Out of any cryptocurrency, Litecoin was chosen for LiteStrategy. Could have done another DAT for Bitcoin, could have chosen another chain. You specifically placed confidence in digital silver. So what is your thesis on Litecoin? Where are we now? Where are we going? And what role do you see Litecoin playing within, I guess, the world of digital monies?
Yeah, that I do get that question from time to time. And I think one of the obvious answers is, we're an N of one. We are the only Litecoin DAT that's out there. And so there was definitely an opportunity to strike, bringing Charlie on board, et cetera, to really take advantage of that untapped opportunity with Litecoin. And I always appreciate the gold versus silver component, but I always try and take it that it's, Litecoin's really a complement to Bitcoin. It's not a challenger. It was never meant to replace Bitcoin. It was to work in tandem. And, I think the gold silver analogy is valid because Bitcoin is a great wealth accumulator. People hold it, it builds value. But Litecoin itself was always structured to be utilized. It was meant to be for payment processing. It's faster, it's cheaper, it's more transactional than Bitcoin. And there's space for both. They both do different things. So, I think from that get-go, it's not necessarily, I would say it's a speculative play, because Litecoin is itself been up for 14+ years with 100% uptime. No one else could say that. It's secure, it's reliable, it's scalable, it has lower transaction fees, like I mentioned. It's faster settlement than Bitcoin. And so it's literally optimized for payments. That's what its utilization was structured for. And that continues to grow. Like if you look at the trend, it continues to grow year over year. But ultimately, the blockchain infrastructure hasn't been fully activated by developers yet, which is one of the reasons why we got involved with LitVM and their development activities. because that is really promising for the Litecoin ecosystem. So, I think ultimately that I think you could consider the resilience of Litecoin as a long-term store of value that hasn't fully materialized in market cap as well. If you go back, I always tell people to go back and look at the previous 5 years or so. Especially right now, Litecoin has seen its share of bear and bull markets, and it's still here. It's still going strong. It's still doing its thing. So I think all of these make Litecoin a very interesting narrative. And when you position it with a company like LiteStrategy and what we can do and what we can execute on, I think it's a very interesting, um, opportunity to take advantage of from all the various opportunities that are out there.
Yeah, the silver and gold analogy, I mean, that's operational, and it was set forth by Charlie. And it was interesting that he called it was the silver to Bitcoin's gold. So he was one of the first to call it Bitcoin digital gold, because that took a few years
Yeah.
for the mainstream media and the larger outlets to really say, okay, we now accept this after trying to how do I say, chase it away for years, and then you can't. Then okay, we can adopt something like this, and we better accept it. But then the gold narrative wasn't always there. Initially, it was person-to-person payments, which, by the way, I think Litecoin, like you've just described, does a lot better in that regard. I think we're realizing Satoshi's white paper a lot better. We are being used for payments. I'm not Litecoin. As someone who talks and is interested in Litecoin, Litecoin is being used probably more than ever. I don't think that is an understatement.
Right.
And there's more coming. People do prefer it for payments. It's number one on BitPay for greater than 2 years. So a lot of the metrics are really encouraging despite the price. Someone at the summit called it a mellow market. I like that term. It's kind of friendly.
It is friendly. Yeah. It's not, that doesn't sting as much.
And despite this mellow market, it's knocking it out of the park in terms of metrics. So this is actually a little bit down my list, but you already mentioned LitVM, and of course a big commitment of $1 million towards their efforts. Maybe tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, LitVM that came on board. We did a 1 million lead investor investment in June that was announced. There's a press release. You can see it on our website. And we ultimately really saw this as a very capital efficient entry into a network that could potentially materially expand Litecoin's utility, functionality, and by extension, I would even say the value of not only Litecoin's value, but also our entire treasury, obviously, because we hold entirely Litecoin. And then therefore that leads to the value to our shareholders. So for anyone who might not be familiar, the very quick synopsis, LitVM is the first layer 2 virtual machine built on Litecoin. So it's bringing smart contract capabilities and Web3 applications to Litecoin for the very first time while preserving its core identity as secure payments on the Litecoin network. So, um, I think I could talk about LitVM forever, but I think, there are many different potential value drivers ultimately that LitVM can bring to Litecoin and the underlying ecosystem. I'll just mention a couple of them really quick so I don't, if I meander too much, just
Please
jump
do.
in and
We encourage it. Yes.
yeah. So LitVM is basically going to help complete Litecoin's infrastructure is kind of how I look at it. So it's going to add that programmability without compromising any of the base layers, simplicity, and security that everyone loves about Litecoin. The reasons why it's been around 14 years with 100% uptime, right? So this moves ultimately Litecoin from a single purpose network, which was payments, to a full stack ecosystem for its payments, add in DeFi, add in real world assets, add in yield, which is going to now attract developers who have an infrastructure for complex applications. It's going to open it up completely. So now you can get hard money security plus smart contract functionality by jumping onto the LitVM platform. So entities that want to tokenize real world assets, obviously huge, right? Real estate, commodities, etc. LitVM basically becomes a proven option for real world platforms that could drive massive, I think massive ecosystem value. And ultimately, what's going to, I think, drive this is user base expansion. As you move away from payments, which we just talked about. It's been a historical base for Litecoin users. You are now going to start attracting DeFi users, real-world asset issuers, people that are in the yield farming, institutional treasuries. It's all open. And overall, you're going to see LitVM as helping to expand and broaden Litecoin's user base. And I think that's only going to lead to more user cases and then even more reasons to hold Litecoin. It's potentially a game changer. So it's very exciting to jump on board. It's a great team. And we're looking to working with them as they move forward to getting things up and going.
Well, it's a big commitment, and it's exciting, really exciting to see this. And of course, Aztec gave a presentation at the Litecoin Summit. They
Yep.
sponsored, I think, the DJ event the first night.
They did. Yeah, I know. I was bummed to miss it.
It's truly impressive, the amount of developers that are, and this is testnet. We haven't even gone to main.
Yeah, exactly. Mainnet's not even online yet. That's later this year.
As of a few weeks ago, we had more than 80 million transactions. I think I'm not remiss to say we're over 100 million transactions already on that testnet. So it's to call it a Swiss Army knife effect for Litecoin is an extreme understatement. But I'm very excited to see the things coming out of LitVM, and it'll be exciting to see how you guys are working together in the future.
Yeah. We've got a great relationship. We've got some governance and some opportunities to do some co-incubation on other opportunities as well. So we're looking forward to working with us.
Very good. In terms of maybe the fund itself, and you actually tweeted about this, I want to say within the last day, Canary Capital, Steve McClure was on the show. We'll link it in the show notes. We support what they're doing. There's choice. There's ETFs. There's also digital asset treasuries. Maybe compare the difference where someone might say, we have an ETF, we have a treasury. Maybe say what you can do that they couldn't do, for example, and how you're structured and how your treasury operates for someone who wants to buy LITs as a ticker.
Yeah, sure. That's a fair question. And my response to people
I like choice, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. And I will never discourage someone if they just want a simple buy and hold strategy, and the ETF is the way to go. It's very, you can get into it. And I think ultimately the creation of ETFs, even, Litecoin based ones, it's great for Litecoin in a macro sense, right? So I'm never going to discourage ETFs or speak badly about them, but it's, frankly, we can do more, right? Which is one of the reasons why, I think people should invest in and do invest in LiteStrategy. So ultimately we commenced what we call our active treasury management programs shortly before the end of last year. And we continue to work with the team from GSR and look for other potential opportunities to basically expand on those. So as I mentioned, we're still currently the largest public holder of Litecoin on a pure position basis, even, compared to the ETFs. And I think that really puts us in a unique position to help support Litecoin itself as a digital commodity, but the ongoing development, which is one of the reasons why LitVM is an investment. So we're really looking to expand the ecosystems. Again, ETFs can't do. So I think, if you take a look at it, ultimately we're going to utilize our LTC balance and try and transform it into a productive reserve asset, right? Which can ultimately benefit investors by smoothing out market volatility, but also supporting the Litecoin ecosystem. So specifically, we can raise more capital. We can buy back stock to improve and smooth out any sort of market fluctuations. We can generate option income. We can leverage our holdings. We can make strategic investments like LitVM, and we can create NAV premium through well-timed capital allocation. All of these things ETFs can't do. And so to date, we've really executed via our ongoing call options and our buyback program. And then when you add in the LitVM investment and their efforts to grow the Litecoin ecosystem, I think this is just a start. We are just approaching, looking at my calendar, it's almost, I think, a year since we made the acquisition of Litecoin and then the rollout and transition to LiteStrategy and our approach. And I think, we're well positioned now to really start striking and make some further investments and take advantage of further opportunities. And and really kind of unlock Litecoin's future, when the timing's right and it makes sense.
So you're able to, as you mentioned, deploy the Litecoin in your treasury. You have more flexibility versus an ETF, which is basically some sort of regulated correspondence of share to Litecoin per whatever. So this is interesting. Again, I like choice. I like to have more options to access Litecoin, not less. And you guys are a big part of that. Um, is Litecoin the 100% of the treasury?
It is.
Okay, so no more biotech or oncology, none of that
Well,
anymore.
as far as the trade, that's a good clarifying,
Yeah.
like you asked. So we actually do still have some pharma preclinical development, and let me tell you why
Very
that's
interesting. Yeah,
important.
go ahead.
So yeah, it's a good question. So we actually retain two pharmacological assets that are in preclinical stage, that really provides a unique low cost strategic hedging that's independent of the Litecoin correlation. So specifically, what we are doing is some early stage preclinical work for these remaining assets in underserved or perhaps tossed aside areas of development that could potentially lead to out licensing or sales opportunities of those assets. And we're not talking about a ton of spend. We're talking, a it's a low cost spend to develop these assets that ultimately might lead to some great non-dilutive capital. And let me even give you an example of this. So I'm not just, talking about this on a whim. So I actually executed a sale of one of our preclinical assets back in October of 24 that has up to 62 million in future payments on the achievement of certain regulatory and revenue milestones. That's real money. We hit those, if the company hits those in their further development, as they develop that asset, that's some great addition for non-dilutive capital that we could then redeploy into our debt operations, either by acquiring more Litecoin, more strategic investments, M&A work, whatever we want to do. So these are real assets, real opportunities that are layered behind that I think ultimately, people should really consider as some sort of degree of a fintech multiple when you're looking at this. We're not just Litecoin. We have these underlying base assets that could really lead to some significant additional non-dilutive capital.
That's very, very interesting, and I appreciate
It
that
makes this
clarity.
unique for sure.
I think so. I think so, and we pray that those succeed and you can roll it into more Litecoin. This is excellent. I do want to talk about the Clarity Act in a minute, but maybe before
Sure.
we moved onto that, we've already talked about LitVM. You've alluded to ecosystem investment. Um, any plans on mining along that front of ecosystem? Any plans you can share with us that maybe you haven't so far?
Sure, sure. Yeah, it's interesting because, I was talking about, of those 70 to 80 DATs that came online in, last year, a lot have pivoted, right? And many have moved into speculative plays, either be it M&A, stable coins. There's examples of, investments in YouTubers, investments in jet engines and, monetizing those. And now we're starting to see some that are even moving into AI data centers. But honestly, that's not our storyline. We're not interested. It's about Litecoin, advancing Litecoin, and advancing the ecosystem. So we've kept from day one our focus on a very programmatic discipline and expanding that ecosystem. And I know that the institutional audience really values that in my conversations on that side of things. So, for the time being, we're going to continue to be active in our treasury management programs as appropriate. We're going to look for other opportunities for yield generation, use GSR's resources and team, and look for operating revenue streams that represent a potential path, to expand that fintech oriented valuation rather than just, kind of a NAV only kind of treatment. So, I think accumulating Litecoin, growing Litecoin holdings per share over time and helping to drive the expansion of the Litecoin ecosystem, all our focus. That's, and, everything that we're looking at. So, you know, we are looking at everything up that's on the potential table. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there. And, the best part about it with a NASDAQ traded company is we give traditional investors a regulated, transparent, equity based way to get Litecoin exposure. You're always going to know what we're doing because we've got our quarterly reports, 8Ks, etc. And you can be an active part of that ongoing Litecoin evolution. So we've got, potential to do a lot more and looking to execute over the next, 12 months, 24 months. I think it's going to be a very interesting process.
Still early. Still
It's
early.
still early. We've only been doing this a year.
Well, it's exciting to watch, and we'll be following it. Before we kind of land the plane on the episode, Clarity, you've been kind of an outspoken. You talked about it. I'm not a
Yeah.
Clarity expert. I know it's probably gone through some iterations and things. There's a lot that's said about it versus maybe what's in it. What's your take on Clarity? Where do you think it's taking your industry, being more regulated, and how would it benefit, for example, LiteStrategy?
Yeah, great question, and we'll see if they get that bad boy out of the gates. I was happy to see it get out of the Senate hearings and into the real discussions on Capitol Hill, but it's not looking real promising to get that done by August. But nonetheless, when I answer this, and again, I am far from um, you know, I'm someone running a DAT, and so I know what I know from reading everything I can get my hands on. I'm not a securities lawyer. I'm not someone who lives in the regulatory space, so I kind of have my answer formulated just from doing my own research. So take it for what it is, right? But I do think ultimately what it really comes down to is, at least for me, the single most impactful provision would be the clear jurisdictional split between the SEC and the CFTC, right? And now the SEC did put out some guidance, but again, that's not legislative action, but at least does give some clarity, which was helpful, and it was what we wanted to see and expected to see. I think is the key, right? We expected it, and it's good to see it. And I think that degree of uncertainty has definitely crept into the crypto market for years, and definitely hasn't helped things. So I think ultimately my hope is that the framework of the Clarity Act of placing digital commodities under CFTC oversight while maintaining SEC jurisdiction over investment contract assets is going to give companies and entities that invest into DATs in crypto space a defined regulatory home for the first time. That clarity could very well unlock institutional capital. And, a lot of that potentially could be sitting on the sidelines. It's debatable. And I think that could only be good for Litecoin ultimately. So I think, I think of it this way, and it's kind of a broader sense. And maybe this is, keep it simple, stupid, but I think regulatory clarity, institutional scaling, tokenization growth, these are all key drivers for catalysts for digital assets. And a more certain regulatory environment is, especially for us, it's a headwind. It's not a tailwind. And I think ultimately, I think it could remove risk narratives that institutions have been potentially holding back on. So I think it could, to the degree of a catalyst that it could be, I think that's debatable because it's one of those things that people are expecting it. If it didn't happen or if it said something they didn't, I think it could be a negative and you could see a negative impact on crypto and the prices. And maybe, I don't know if you're going to see the volatility that we just saw last October, but
Yeah, that was
I don't necessarily you're going to see a huge influx of capital returning back into the space if Clarity does, get approved and resolved. But it's certainly not going to hurt. And like I said, I think all regulatory clarity is a good thing. It's not only for us, but I think it's just industry in general.
Yeah, and the CFTC, I believe, had made a statement on Litecoin being a commodity a few years ago. Even Gensler, former SEC chairman, as tough as he was, he mentioned Bitcoin, Litecoin, Bitcoin Cash because it shares the same Genesis block. That was it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's 20, 30,000 tokens and varieties on CoinMarketCap. I don't know. It's probably higher than that now. I can't keep up with it. But there's only a very few that can actually constitute a commodity. And you would agree that Litecoin, personal opinion, of course, you would agree that Litecoin is a digital commodity.
Yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And right now it looks like the only thing that we're getting is some clarity on tax legislation, which is needed too. Don't get me wrong, that's needed. But it's not nearly as the day someone calls tax legislation, a sexy topic coming out of Capitol Hill, I would question your sanity. But it's really, let's get that Clarity Act passed and let's get to it.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I think we thought it would have been done by now. Now we're wondering, you said maybe by August. We'll see. We'll find out. But I tend to agree with you. I think initially a lot of us in this space, at least in the old days, still there's a remnant, but it was very libertarian. Kind of like, there is no permission. These are permissionless systems. We don't need it, rubber stamps from governments. These are apart from government. And I understand the philosophy behind that. But I think with integration into the system that exists, you do need to have regulation to a degree. And hopefully it's good regulation, because it's going to be something. So you ought to form it in the image that would be most beneficial. So I tend to be with you on that. We always have to watch it. We have to look at it piece by piece and read the language if possible. I mean, I'm not sure how long clarity is by now, but that's a good word. I tend to agree with you on that. Well, let me tell you, it's been really good having you, Jay. We talked about LiteStrategy, how you basically began, some of the journey, what you're doing in terms of investing into the ecosystem. Anything you want to leave us with today before we close?
Yeah, my one takeaway that I always tell people is, go to our website, go to LiteStrategy.com. We have purposely built out a very robust website that provides not only the basic information that you would expect to see with a public company, but we've really focused on building out it as an educational tool for Litecoin. The background on it, there's tons of media that is linked to it. Lots of podcasts and other information that Charlie's done, that myself has done. So I would just really encourage people to go if this sounds interesting. And, ultimately, if you are, looking at, an asset, we're an N of one, and, you want some Litecoin exposure with some, what I consider potential tons of upside, ease of access, easy to, acquire. We're a NASDAQ traded company that comes with all the transparency that a public company has. I think you should give us a good look. So, but yeah, hit up the website. I think you'll be impressed. Take a good look. It's a good educational tool. And, I appreciate anyone's interest in Litecoin and the Litecoin ecosystem. I think we're at a very interesting spot right now that, we have another conversation, maybe 6 months. I think we could see some very interesting activities.
It's good. Well, very good. I appreciate your time coming on the podcast tonight, episode number 59 with Jay File. Again, you can find him on X at J_Lits. LiteStrategy is found at LiteStrategy. And of course, we thank all of our listeners here at the 84 Million Podcasts. Give us a subscription on YouTube. Follow us at 84 Million or the 84 Million Podcast on X. We appreciate all of you for tuning in wherever you are tuning in, if you're watching this or if you're listening. So Jay, we appreciate you. Have a good evening. We hope to talk soon.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for the time.
Absolutely.
Take care.